history is this enormous ocean, right? And what we usually learn is just scratching the surface. But under those waves, there are countless stories, huge moments, and some pretty shocking truths that have been lost, sometimes on purpose, sometimes just because time has a way of doing that. These aren't small details. These are events that genuinely shaped our world. Yet they're tucked away in the shadows, mostly missing from our school books and what we normally hear about. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a few of these forgotten histories. What if I told you about a battle where American and German soldiers actually fought together against the SS in World War II? Or a horrific massacre that was kept quiet for decades, where just how you said a single word could mean life or death? Sounds like something out of a movie, but nope, these things really happened. When you think of the biggest sea disasters, Titanic is probably the first one that pops into your head, maybe the Lusitania too. But what if I told you there was a sinking in World War II that killed more people than both of those combined? A tragedy so huge it's still the deadliest single ship sinking ever. Yet most people have never even heard the name MV Wilhelm Gustloff. Launched back in 1937, the Wilhelm Gustloff started out as a cruise ship for the Nazi Strength Through Joy program, a real symbol of German ambition. But by 1945, as World War II was reaching its brutal end and the Soviet Red Army was pushing hard from the east, the ship got a very different job, Operation Hannibal. This was a massive, desperate attempt to evacuate German civilians and soldiers from East Prussia by sea. On January 30th, 1945, the Wilhelm Gustloff left Gutenhofen, which is Gdynia, Poland today, absolutely crammed with people, way more than it was ever meant to hold. Official passenger lists? Forget about it, it was chaos. Estimates say there were around 10,000 to 10,600 people on board. A shocking number of them were refugees, and get this, maybe 5,000 were children, all trying to escape the fighting. This ship, built for less than 2,000 passengers and crew, became a floating city of fear and hope in the freezing Baltic Sea. That hope didn't last long. In the dead of night, the Soviet submarine S-13, under Commander Alexander Marinesko, spotted its target. 3 torpedoes slammed into the Gustloff. Pure panic. The ship wasn't built for an attack like that, and lots of its safety gear was frozen or impossible to get to. It listed and sank into the icy water in just over an hour. Rescue efforts were a nightmare because of the darkness, the bitter cold, and just how many people were in the water. Out of all those thousands, only about 1,239 survivors were officially counted. The death toll? Probably over 9,300 people. So why isn't this colossal loss of life more famous? Well, a few things played into it. The Nazi regime itself tried to keep the news quiet to stop morale from collapsing in those last desperate months of the war. After the war, the world was dealing with the sheer horror of Nazi atrocities. So the story of German suffering, especially civilian refugees, was complicated and often got pushed aside. The Cold War didn't help either, making it a sensitive topic in a divided Germany. It's really only in the last few decades that the Wilhelm Gustloff story has started to get wider attention, a grim reminder of the unbelievable human cost of war, especially for the innocent people caught in the middle. Picture a border. Not just a line on a map, but a place where cultures mixed. Families often had roots on both sides, and life just sort of flowed. That was the border region between Haiti and the Dominican Republic for a long time. Then in October 1937, that peace was shattered by an act of state-sponsored terror so brutal, it's still hard to wrap your head around: the Parsley Massacre. Under the orders of the Dominican dictator Rafael Trujillo, the Dominican military went on a rampage to kill Haitians and Dominicans of Haitian background living inside the Dominican Republic. The numbers are sickening. Estimates of how many men, women, and children were murdered in just 5 to 8 days range from 17,000 to as many as 35,000. The way they were killed was barbaric, many with machetes, bayonets, or clubs. This was a deliberate choice, helping Trujillo push the lie that these were just patriotic Dominican farmers spontaneously rising up against Haitian cattle thieves, not a calculated military slaughter. The event got its infamous name, the Parsley Massacre, because of a cruel test soldiers supposedly used to pick out their victims. The Spanish word for parsley, perejil, sounds different when native Spanish speakers say it compared to Haitian Creole speakers. If your pronunciation gave away your Haitian roots, it could mean death. But honestly, this test was often unnecessary, since many of those targeted were bicultural and spoke both languages. For decades, Trujillo's regime did everything it could to bury what happened. He flat out denied his government's role, and newspapers weren't allowed to even mention it. The regime tried to justify the genocide with a hateful, nationalistic, anti-Haitian ideology, spinning it as a defense of Dominican identity and border security. This horrific event was used to forge a lasting ethnic divide and deep-seated racism that has affected Dominican society and politics for generations, and you can still see the fallout today in things like citizenship and discrimination issues. Outside of the Caribbean, the Parsley Massacre is still a largely forgotten piece of 20th century violence. It's a chilling reminder of how easily hate can be turned into a weapon by a dictator, and how quickly people can be dehumanized, leading to unimaginable horrors. Remembering it isn't just about the victims, it's about understanding the lasting and dangerous power of state-sponsored hate. What followed was a desperate fight. About 100 to 150 Waffen-SS soldiers attacked the castle, dead set on either recapturing or killing the well-known French figures. The defenders were massively outnumbered. This ragtag group of Americans, German Wehrmacht soldiers, and even some of the French prisoners who picked up weapons. But they fought like lions. Captain Lee's Sherman tank gave them vital covering fire until SS artillery knocked it out. Tragically, Major Gangle was killed by a sniper while trying to shield former Prime Minister Reynaud. Ammunition was running dangerously low. Just when it looked like the defenders were about to be overrun, an American relief force from the 142nd Infantry Regiment finally showed up and scattered the SS attackers. They'd been alerted by the tennis player Barotra, who had bravely leaped over the castle wall to run and get help. The Battle of Castle Itter is such a unique little story in the history of World War II. It really speaks to individual conscience and the bizarre friendships that can form when you're up against a common, fanatical enemy. It just goes to show how complicated war can be, how lines of loyalty can get blurry, and how acts of incredible bravery can come from the most unexpected people. History books are full of long, drawn-out wars, but what about the shortest war ever recorded? That odd little title goes to the Anglo-Zanzibar War, fought on August 27, 1896. Depending on who you ask, this war lasted just 38 to 45 minutes. Now, how long it lasted might sound almost like a joke, but the reasons behind it and what happened afterwards were all about the very serious business of 19th century European empires. The stories we've dug up today are really just a few pieces of a much bigger hidden picture of our shared past. From the freezing Baltic Sea to a sun-baked Caribbean border, from a castle under siege in Austria to a war-torn Canadian port and a quickly defeated African sultanate. These events show us that history is way more complex, surprising, and often more unsettling than what we usually learn. When we bring these forgotten stories out, we're not just learning about random incidents. We're getting a deeper, fuller, and truer understanding of how our world got to be the way it is. These aren't just tales you weren't supposed to know. They're stories that really need to be remembered. Thanks for coming along with us as we explored some of these hidden histories.